Hello, everyone. Welcome to another virtual astrology club. We're going to be going over the next 2 weeks of August. So, the second half of August, August part two. I'm Dr. Claire Moon. Thanks for joining me. If you're new, welcome. There's a chat over to the side of your screen, and that is where you can ask me questions. If you feel like sharing, you totally can. I have a hard time keeping up with some of the longer it is, the harder it is for me to keep up with it. There is a 20-second delay, but I usually circle back around to the chat like several times during this. And if you do have astrology questions, I do have a once monthly and response time, and that is usually the second Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. Central Time. The forecast, it changes. It's just whenever I decide the astrology weather looks good enough for me to do this. So, anyway, let's get into it. Let me find my announcements. Let's see if we have anyone in the chat. Got my little tabby tabs. Hopefully, August has been treating people well. I know that sometimes every time I do a forecast, I purposely keep myself in a little bit of a vacuum because I don't want other people's ideas to get into mine accidentally. And so it just totally takes out the equation, or it takes chances of even accidental plagiarism out of the equation if I'm not listening to other people's forecasts. So, until I do mine, then I listen in on other people's forecasts, which PS really sucks because I really want to listen to other people's. But yeah, it's just how I roll with things. But I gotta say, now that I've listened to like the first half of like the astrology podcast and just like then also watching online, there's one thing I forgot. So I want to circle back around to Venus square Uranus. I missed that entirely. Um, so thank you, of course. We all love the astrology podcast, right? I know I do. Thanks for that one. And then they mentioned that at some point. And then what was the other thing too? Oh yeah, just like the online vibes about the month of August. Whoa, I did not realize people were being so negative about it. I mean, I know the mutable stuff, all the squarey squares and oppositions and all that. Like, yeah, not ideal. Very mixed bag. Very mixed bag territory with our, Venus and Jupiter and Mars and Saturn all up in the same modality in the mutable cross. Um, but yeah, like, I don't know, hasn't been all bad, at least for me. And yeah, I guess it was just really funny to be like, whoa, was I like overly positive about August? I don't know. I mean, certainly it was going to be shifty and rearrangey because we've got a Mercury retrograde. And we've got the big square. So definitely a little grindy, crunchy. And I've been seeing that too. It's like I personally, and let me actually, we're kind of going into reflection mode, old business mode. Um, and then I'm going to do a little meditation thingy, and then we'll get into the future. Uh, but yeah, what am I even talking about? So what is like everyone online is just like, wow, very, very on alert about August. I mean, we got a Mercury retrograde happening. That's occurring. We also have this square going on. Um, and these are kind of the big things that have been happening. So yeah, we'll definitely be talking about these more over the next hour and a half. We're going to go through the whole Mercury cycle to date and beyond. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm going to try to be positive. I'm going to try to keep it constructive despite despite it being, yeah, we got a Mars Saturn square. Yes, that is there. So, how can we be with all of the different things without like raining on our own parade accidentally, and always assuming that it's going to be the crunchy part of things versus like, yeah, we also have Jupiter and Venus. Now, again, I'll get into some more details about them. But yeah, I just wanted to address like that vibe. I was like, wow, what a vibe. Did I like, I mean, I knew it was a difficult month in some ways. But yeah, I don't know. This is another thing where if you listen to my question and response session that I have monthly, I went on a bit of a philosophical digression. Um, and now I'm kind of trying to remember if it was my last forecast. I went on a philosophical digression at some point very recently in one of my recent videos about how with forecasting, um, online especially, I feel like there's a lot of sensationalism. There's a lot of fear mongeriness, and not insofar as like astrologers who forecast difficult transits. Like those happen. I'm not gonna tell you that there's not going to be some days where maybe we need to mind our own business and just take care of ourselves extra good. I'm not going to pretend like those days don't exist, but I was hearing a lot of just in the last, well, I mean, since I got here like years ago, but especially recently, I've been noticing a lot of astrologers who I feel like should know better being like, oh, you're going to feel this way or you're going to feel that way. And it's like, don't tell people how they're going to feel. So, if you're listening to this, I can't, I don't need the circle anymore. If you're listening to this later or you're here right now, I'm not going to tell you how you're going to feel. That is a different thing than what the weather is in the sky. So, what I think it is good is to try to separate those two things. Like, yes, we might have some astrology happening. There's always something happening. There's always something. Like, there's never not some crunchiness somewhere in our lives, right? Like, but I think we can go into the future with curiosity. I'm trying to be like more curious, excited to see and to watch astrology in action, versus telling you, oh, you're going to feel funky or whatever. Now, in September, we have a Pisces eclipse that, okay, when we're dealing with water, we're dealing with moons, dealing with Neptune, like, yeah, there could be some certain mind states that come into play. And I try to name those certain mind states that could come in, but that's a very different thing than being like, you're going to feel a certain way. So just gird your loins for that. Like, that's just, it seems irresponsible to me. And it like puts little seeds of fear and weirdness out into the ether. So I want to like maintain some sense of agency. Now I'm going on a philosophical digression anyway, right here. That's fine. I said I was going to do more of these too because of this. Seeing astrologers do kind of a bad job. And sometimes it's me. Sometimes I'm doing the bad job of not instilling seeds of fear and trying to cultivate agency and curiosity in this whole process, right? Like I think that's more of the goal. So I don't remember what got me on that digression, but I'm glad I went on to it. Um, I think that, oh yeah, I was talking about hard transits because we're in a few. And the vibe for the month is rough, but curiosity, agency, yeah, that's the vibe all the time, no matter what the weather. So I guess a few things from the past, and then I'll check in with the chat. And PS, like as I'm talking about these transits from the last couple weeks, well, just 2 weeks. If you have anecdotes, if you have astrology good, astrologer good things to share, please do so in the chat or the comments below if you're listening to this later. I'm always curious about what people have seen matches the astrology that just happened while it's still really fresh in our brains. Um, all right. So the first thing that I missed was this Venus-Uranus square. And it perfected on August 2nd, but it was really what carried us into August. So end of July, August. And Venus-Uranus squares can be a time of change in relationship, doing things differently in relationship. If it has to do with like Venus yum yums, beauty, fun, romance type of stuff, it can be like, going on a date night at a different restaurant than you usually do, or trying something new in the bedroom, It can always be that. Now, a square denotes a little bit of tension with this. So if someone is doing something different in the partnership of a pair of people, whether it's romantic, business, or otherwise, friendship, um, if someone's doing something differently and the other person is not doing it with them, sometimes that can cause a little bit of tension. So that's one possibility. But I love Uranus-Venus contacts for trying things new with art, beauty, connection, peopling, um, doing new novel things, basically, with Venus. And if there are interruptions, disruptions in relationship, knowing that they're temporary and to go with the flow as much as possible. Let's say you are trying to do a date night and the classic thing I always say, like the restaurant is closed or your favorite thing isn't on the menu. How can you pivot into maybe having some kind of happy accident, you know? But yeah, I noticed it for me at the end of July. I was having some tension about my own values in relationship and how I was able to be, it's very much like the sloppy Buddhist householder problem of like, I'm not protected in a monastery. Um, there's gossip happening around everywhere all the time. Like my teacher, Joseph Goldstein, says that like if you take out talking about people who aren't in the room, if you take that out of your language, you're like basically left with like 10% of what you were talking about. A lot of people. It's not everyone, but a lot of us, our people's lives just revolve around talking about other people. And I'm like, there's not, and some of that's really necessary. Some of that is natural, some of it, so not to judge or demonize, but I was having a lot of challenge with embodying my ethics in a way that suited me and being able to have the freedom to do that in my personal life. And yeah, some tension there. Just frustration. I just had frustration. Like nothing happened out of the ordinary. There was no like interruption, disruption. There was nothing, um, nothing like super surprisey, but I was feeling itchy and uncomfortable. And it just in general, like I was talking to my mom, I was talking to like, my mom is, I love her to death, but a lot of our families, I mean, so many of our families, there's so much of this that goes on, right? I don't think I'm you know, I don't think it's that uncommon that I'm calling myself out too poorly here. Uh, but yeah, I was feeling really itchy and like I wanted more independence and space and freedom to just like do whatever I wanted to do in terms of, embodying my beliefs and what I valued. And it was like it was nothing that I think anyone outside of me noticed, but I had some internal conflict, some internal tension about it. And I was like, oh yeah, Venus, square Uranus, freedom, eccentricity, doing me very, very much, very loudly. And of course, all of this, Venus and the sun in this very expressive Leo, fire sign, action oriented, wants to act and show up and embody things consistently and not be interrupted in that. Um, mm, good stuff. Totally astrologer good. Very astrologer good. Um, did anyone else did anyone notice anything at the end of July? Did anyone find like a new ice cream flavor? Did anyone like do a new date night? Like, hello everyone. Welcome back. Ooh, we got someone from LA, Baltimore, and Cleveland. We've got the whole thing covered. I'm in the middle. We got someone from Tasmania. What time is it even there? It's tomorrow. You're in the future already. That's amazing. Um, all right. Welcome. Let's see. Was there any other? So I guess just to teach y'all how to fish here, because I really like to do that. Um, that Venus square Uranus, the last one was August 2nd. I guess we're gonna have an opposition at some point. When's that gonna be? October 14th is going to be the Venus opposite Uranus. So that might be another point of kind of like wanting or needing a bit more freedom or space in partnership or doing things differently in partnership or connection in relationship, doing things differently with ethics or art or beauty or anything Venus-y related, like leaning into doing things differently even though it might feel kind of difficult, or just knowing if there are changes, disruptions, that's a temporary kind of situation, and we just have to navigate it the best we can. And then the next square, which won't be quite the same because it matters who's to the left or to the right. So December 28th. Now Venus is overcoming. And so this one's usually, in my experience, and maybe that I'm biased because I'm an Aquarius rising, so that's a confounding variable. This might just feel nice for me because like, yeah, it's Venus in my first. And it really depends on the chart. However, when I see Venus overcoming a planet in earlier order, it's like Venus has the louder imprint versus Uranus. So this one that we're going to have in December, that's our next Venus-Uranus square, it seems more Venus forward. Um, and then even though it's a square and there might be some fear or tension or kind of like, oh, I got to adjust or change and whatever to meet this thing, uh, it feels like more, a little bit softer, a little bit easier with Venus on the top. Okay, Venus, Uranus square. I have nothing else to say about that. Um, oh yeah, and then kind of fun and very curious. I'm actually going to crowdsource and be super selfish for a second. Self-focused, I should say. Um, Mercury station retrograde. And I had a really great conversation with a client. Um, and I discovered nonviolent communication. So I don't know if anyone is familiar in the chat. Nonviolent communication, the guy who does it, I heard some news about him, the author of this technique that I'm like, I'm not so sure. I don't want to get into a Neil Gaiman situation. But the concepts were really cool. And like Mercury was stationing retrograde as I was becoming aware of this way of speaking and moving through conflict resolution in a lot of ways with nonviolent communication. I've spent like less than 8 hours exploring it. So don't, take everything I say about it with a grain of salt. I don't know enough about it yet to proselytize about it, but it seems pretty cool. And I was like, oh yeah, Mercury stationing retrograde. I'm going to rethink my communication. Like it's so perfect. It's so perfect. But yeah, if anyone like has found that it's cool, it's good, you like it, and you have cool resources, books, put them in the comments for me. I would love to know because I want to learn more about it. Um, that was my Mercury station. And I mean, every time Mercury is retrograde, I learn something that I should have already known. I learn about my software usually. I had one thing so far like that where I learned about a technology or a piece of technology. I learned more about it during Mercury retrograde, and it was just a few days ago. And I have an immersion blender. And if anyone is not familiar, an immersion blender is like a blender, blend, like I'm making cake dough or batter or whatever. Um, but it's like a handheld one. Very cool. And I always thought that you had to detach like this whole chunk of it to get the whisk off of it. Turns out the whisk just pulls on out like every other hand mixer I've ever had. So like, yeah, it was like it was like, oh, of course, like, why didn't I see that before? So we have advancements in the kitchen. I also made my first focaccia and I'm about to do my second tonight. I'm going to start uh, more bread. So bread is happening. Yeast is super intimidating to me. People who make bread, I am just like uh yeah, I'm so impressed by people who make bread. So Mercury retrograde's been pretty cool for me so far. I've definitely had like typos, and like I don't know. There's been, oh, I'm not going to say what it was, but I did have one really difficult typo situation that it was an impactful one, and it was a real bummeroni on my part. So typos happen. Sometimes they're low impact, Sometimes they're high impact. So yeah, not totally unscathed. However, uh, a lot of constructive stuff as well. Let's see if anyone has anything to add. Someone's moving in, cohabitating with their boyfriend. Wow. Good luck. This is such a Mercury retrograde. I know, we usually talk about not, yeah, this is a good segue into the future, but we should do a little meditation first. Um, Mercury retrograde, we do talk about it as a time to, be really careful about things and not necessarily like sign on the dotted line, the beginnings of things being seeded into a Mercury retrograde. It's not ideal. At the same time, you know, life happens. And a lot of times the Mercury retrograde is just very descriptive of whatever is going on. So, like the rearranging of all of your stuff or the packing up of stuff and finding old things that you forgot about. Um, all very, very retrograde-y, So sometimes it just fits like that. And another word for this, like, it comes more from like horary astrology, where when you cast a chart for a question, if the chart looks like the question, it's called like being radicality. Um, Coming from this like Latin root word for radix, or it's the root word for root. It means root, radix, root, radical. So when the chart looks like the thing that you're exploring, that's a good sign. That's like a green flag for a more clear horary response. But in any event, when we're having a Mercury retrograde, if things are going on around you that just seem like it fits, like it's like, okay, that's cool then, and what's extra cool about that is that you then can use that as a clock. And so if you have any plot lines about Mercury retrograde that are happening in your life right now, whether that has to do with the house topics of Leo and Virgo, as well as Gemini, because Mercury rules Gemini. If there's any plot lines around those house topics described, then we know that by the end of August, those plot lines should be wrapping up. And then even more so by like September 11th, we get Mercury out of their post retrograde phase. So plot lines should definitely be wrapping up by the second week of September. So if you are identifying things that are like, oh, this is my retrograde, this is what my retrograde is going to be, then you have a clock for it too, which is kind of the point. That's kind of why we're doing this. So uh, just want to throw that out there. And let's do a little meditation and then we'll get into the actual astrology of the future, look at our dates of interest, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I found another good one from the Roshi Halifax deck. Pew, 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 air horns. All right. This felt really perfect, actually. I'll point it out on the chart. This felt really perfect for all of the benefics and malefics blending together in these signs of the zodiac that symbolize the changing of the seasons. So Pisces, Sag, Virgo, Gemini, they're all correlated in timing, those seasons. It's like Gemini, quote unquote, season is when spring is turning into summer. Virgo season in the northern hemisphere, at least this is all very northern hemisphere centric. Sorry, Tasmania. Hold on a second. Bear with me. Um, Virgo changing from summer to fall to autumn. It would be the reverse then for the southern hemisphere. What is the same is we're still changing a season, whether that's from, in the opposite direction, from winter to spring, still that changing type of energy. And so that's where some of the symbolism of these mutable signs come from, is that changing of from one season to the next. So we get flexibility, adaptability, and changeability for better or for worse. And right now in all of that area, we have these planets that are the quote unquote malefics and benefics, are planets of intensity and temperance, the conditions for growth versus extreme conditions. Very different. And so I found the perfect little meditation to fit that. It's called Strong Back, Soft Front. Got a strong back and a soft front. Very different vibes, all in the same place. Very both and, just like Gemini. Um, okay, for those of you who are live with me, if you want, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. No worries. You can go get a snack or whatever. But this will just take a few minutes. And I'm doing this because I want to help ground us a bit before we like launch off into the stratosphere and like start thinking about the future and like all the shit that could happen. So we gotta keep a tether. We gotta keep anchored. It's also good for me, actually, too. Holy regulation, Batman. We're gonna go to there. Okay. So strong back, soft front. On an inhalation, gather your attention and release distractions. On, on the exhalation, drop your attention into your body and relax. Sense your spine, which exemplifies equanimity. Through your strong back, you can be with whatever is present. Experience the front of your body as open, receptive, and permeable. Through your open heart, let the world into your experience. Let your strong back and open heart give you genuine presence. Strong back, soft front, equanimity, compassion. Yeah, being with what is, equanimity, being open-hearted, curious, compassion. Exactly what we need to do astrology well, in my opinion. All right, friends, that was nice. Another thing I'm gonna keep doing. I did it last time, but especially if you find yourself in a state of concern or fear or worry about anything that might come. If Claire is like, uh-oh, mind your own business, and it induces any fear, what I like to do is look around the room that I'm in, wherever I am. If I'm in a room, if you're outside, and you're listening to this outside, check in with the senses. I like to look around and just remind myself that I'm here right now and I am safe and there are no predators in the room. So my lizard brain can know that I'm safe. Yeah, it's really helpful. It's kind of one of those things where like you find out that it's good to eat vegetables and go for walks and you're like, dang it, why is it true? And there's something about looking around the room and just being with your senses that is really regulating, at least for me. So that's providing you are in a safe space. And if you're not, I'm sorry. And this might not be the best advice for you. See a better trained professional than I, who has no training in anything. Well, I shouldn't say anything. If you know, you know. Okay. So with that, now that we're all tethered, let's get into the datey dates. We've got our dates of interest for the month ahead. On the 4th of August, we've got Venus entering Virgo. On the 4th and 5th, depending on where you are, Mercury is going to be stationing retrograde. Sorry, this already happened. On the 4th, Leo new moon that we already had. Now on the 14th, which was yesterday, Mercury re-entered Leo. On the 18th, we're going to have Mercury-Sun conjunction happening, the Mercury Cazimi, which is the middle part of that retrograde time. On the 19th, we're going to have Aquarius full moon. On the 22nd, it is Virgo season. The sun is going to enter Virgo. On the 28th, Mercury is stationing direct. And at the end of the month, on the 29th, Venus is entering Libra. I'm going to add it to the end here on the 30th of August. We have a really big benefic lunar enclosure that it goes from when the moon is at 1 degree to 19 degrees of Leo. So I'm just going to say that right now, right up front. So when the moon here is at 1 degrees of Leo, all the way to 19, the moon is going to be nestled in between the rays of Venus and Jupiter. The moon is protected from Saturn, so that ray doesn't count by at least this aspect doctrine. So that's really nice for us. At the very least, if things are rough on August 30th, when the moon is between 1 and 19 degrees of Leo, that can be a time of respite, of rest, an ability to kind of rest and regroup if things have been difficult. Or it could be that things just don't turn out as crappy as they might have if it wasn't a lunar benefic enclosure in that moment. I've had that happen to me before, where it's like, wow, that could have gone way worse, and it miraculously didn't. At best, a lunar benefic enclosure, when the moon is between these nice rays of Venus and Jupiter, it can be a time of nice stuff, yum yums, good times, great people, good feels. So yeah, I dig it. August 30th. It lasts 33 hours. So it's really like Friday the 30th into August 31st on Saturday. All right, those are my datiest dates. And then I do want to just give a few other just general things. Sorry, uno momento. Yeah, I probably need to talk about the Mercury-Uranus squares at some point. I will probably talk about that, but okay. Just related to this benefic, malefic mixed bag that we have right now, I thought it might be interesting to keep track of the days when the moon is in these mutable places, because I think those are the days where we're going to be feeling Mars and Saturn the most. So the days where the moon is with all of these things, and it might be busyness, a lot of activity, cool things, less cool things, bittersweet, on like the 20th, 21st of August, the 26th, 27th of August, and September 3rd and 4th. So if we go to there, so here on the 20th of August, the moon is with Saturn in Pisces. And then on the 21st, they're finishing that up, being with Neptune and still co-presence with Saturn. And then on the 26th, 27th, that's when the moon is going to be in Gemini with Jupiter, but getting an overcoming square from Saturn and being with Mars. And then we'll talk again before this, but September 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, 4th-ish. September 2nd, 3rd, 4th-ish. Then we've got Mercury. They're going to be moving through Virgo. Or sorry, the moon's going to be moving through Virgo. So that is another contact with both malefics. So those are the days where, again, like what to expect. My fuzzy outline for like the 20th, 21st, 26th, 27th, 3rd, 4th. I think those are the days where the moon is just really going to be feeling this changeability, all of the change that's going on, or the busyness, or the multitudinous. Like there's so many things going on. I think with especially, whatever house topics are with Gemini, you probably have many irons in the fire when it's, whatever is related to those life topics. So for this Capricorn rising, just in like with pets, with um labor spaces, with your labor, with health. Maybe you got a lot of stuff going on. So just be prepared to maybe be busier those days, um, being confronted with different energies than you're used to. It doesn't look like boring days on those ones that I just gave. So just like take care of yourself leading into those. Mars is in a square with Saturn until the 17th. So as I record this, it is the 15th of August. So we've got 2 more days of Mars being in application with Saturn. But even after that, like after the 17th for a few days, Mars is still going to be kind of in they're going to have that aftertaste. Um, I would really like to see how we're feeling once we get to like August 19th. Then Mars is 3 degrees away from Saturn. And I expect, a lot of those delays, challenges, slowness. Um, I've been seeing some people, myself included, like shaking off some rust on some movement things. And yeah, it's kind of slow going, but I think by August 19th and beyond, things are going to start to move faster. We're not going to feel as impeded or as slowed down. Um, I've had kind of the tires spinning sort of thing happening with myself, where it's like I'm really busy, I'm getting a lot done, I'm doing stuff. It's not that I'm not doing things. And yet my list of stuff is not changing. Like I haven't like finished my chart calculations coursework yet at all. Like I need to update my books. So it's like, yeah, I'm busy, but I feel like I'm going nowhere. I think in the last part of August, we're going to feel not like that as much. I think I'm going to be feeling not like that as much. I think, if there has been progress stalled, Jupiter wants to expand and say yes and do progress. And that has also been running into the beams of Saturn. Now they get beyond that on the 19th. But again, we'll probably need some time, with Jupiter, maybe a couple weeks to really see that continuation of like just more and more expansion, more and more speed, more and more progress with things as there's more separation. But at least I want to see how we're feeling those last 10 days of August versus before the 19th. I think it's going to be a little bit of a different vibe. And then last random, no, two other, well, not random, two other broad view things for the next 2 weeks. I noticed some kind of Chiron heavy days. It's like Moon, Mercury, Mars, and Chiron are all doing something. And I will talk about it more, but on the 22nd through the 24th, I noticed very Chiron heavy days. When Chiron gets involved, it's usually some tender stuff. Sometimes it's pretty subtle. Maybe it's in a part of your chart that isn't activated right now and you won't notice it. But yeah, I don't know. It's days to just be extra kind and compassionate and sweet to each other because we might be going through things or they might be going through things. Because yeah, Chiron can be kind of a thorn in the paw. Chiron is also into healing and teaching and mentorship. So if there's a lot of learning and mentory, teachy things happening, like the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, that could also be going on. And that would be, and the fact that we've got, let me circle what I mean here, actually. I'll just show you. Mercury, Mars, Chiron. And on the 22nd, the moon is with Chiron and playing into all this stuff. Yeah, these are the days that I'm talking about. So yeah, in the Leo, Gemini, Aries parts of our lives, whatever those house topics are, that's where we might want to be really just kind and extra, just careful around things that might be tender. And then also knowing that there might just be a lot of vibes of teaching, learning, embodying new knowledge, embodying and acting and behaving in a way that really reflects like healing or, you know, understanding or learning. So it's the last thing I'll say too is that because we have some benefic involvement here, and these are sextiles and trines, I do think these Chiron heavy days could also be really constructive. So 22nd through the 24th. And last thing, Venus and Mars at the end of the month into September are going to be contending with Neptune. So as the month wraps up, then we're going to have Mars and Venus dealing with Neptune. So yeah, that's the other big signature. So we've got Mercury retrograde story continuing. We've got the square of the mutable square. We got that starting to break up a bit, just by degree a bit in the last part of August, which I think is going to leave things feeling more freer and open and less stalled and rigid or tense. Um, Mercury square, uh, Chiron stuff, Neptune stuff. Those are kind of my four things. So let's get into the details and start with right now. What is going on right now? We actually just had this really cool fire trine, and I was so curious about what this was going to be in the last forecast. What it ended up being for me was last night when the moon was still at the end of Sagittarius. Oh, darn it. There. Um, yeah. Moon at the last part of Sagittarius, connecting with Chiron and the Sun and Mercury in Leo. So we've got this fire grand trine happening. And I wondered what that would be because it seems really fun and expressive, maybe experimental. It could also have some complexity to it or some little notes of difficulty or something because there's a Mercury retrograde and there's Chiron. So I was curious about what that would be. So for me, it was me going to a burlesque show for the first time in like, I don't know. I mean, probably a good couple years. I'm totally guessing. It's been so long. Yeah, like a year and a half, 2 years. Yeah, somewhere around there. It's been that long. And I did burlesque for like 6 or 7 years before that. So it was a huge part of my life. And then the pandemic happened, blah, 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 a bunch of stuff. And I got kind of separated from it, but I came back to it. I came back to this super expressive art. Very fire, very spicy, very expressive. Yeah, so that was fun. It was so much fun. It was a great show. Like there were so many people that I was just like, wow, like I don't know. I feel like even in my city, burlesque has just it's just improved like somehow over the last few years. And it's like all these new people that I don't know. So I'm so out of the loop. So for me, I think part of it was, this tinge of like, I feel just kind of uninitiated and a bit like on my own, because I knew one person on the roster, and that was the person I went to go watch, who I did know from the before times. In burlesque, but it was just, yeah, I mean, that aside, like it was so good to be back and to like then say, okay, I'm gonna get to know these people. I'm gonna get to like know this world a little bit again. And even just to spectate, not that I'll go out of retirement, but I have just assumed that at some point I'll go back on stage. There were a lot of parts of it that I was like, yeah, I remember why I stepped away. Like it is so energy consuming. It's very deeply energy consuming. And it was such a reminder about like, yeah, how much work goes into doing that kind of craft. But yeah, it was a remembering coming back of I mean, for me, Mercury's in charge of my fifth house of creativity and self-expression. So yeah, it really fit for me. I don't know if anyone else had anything interesting happen yesterday, but fire stuff, expressive stuff, action-oriented things might have been going on. I guess, was there anything else? So now the moon is in Capricorn, and this is more chill, definitely more chill vibes. We're out of the busyness because like in Sag, the moon was just getting stuff from everyone. There's just so many aspects happening to the moon when they were in Sagittarius. There are a few less here. They're not getting any traditional aspects from like 4 planets. So I assume today, tomorrow, the 16th, going to be a bit more chill. The moon is out of bounds right now. So for those who like look at the declination, like the height of the moon relative to the ecliptic and the sun, um, it can get pretty high above and pretty far below, like southern or northerly. And it is kind of at that extreme right now. So when the moon is out of bounds, it's like, or any planet out of bounds, their expression is kind of just feral in a few ways. Like they just do whatever they want. They're not within the bounds of what is expected. They're not within the bounds that all the other planets are hanging out in. And so we can take whatever symbolism we want from that. But I think it can be an almost intensification of it, or makes it more special for some reason. It's a Capricorn moon. Maybe we'll be a little extra Capricorn moony today and tomorrow. Mercury Cazimi on the 18th. Let's go to that. So let's talk about this Mercury story a little bit. Before I do, let me check with the chat. And if anyone does have any fun Mercury things, like please share them. I forgot to post about this until like 3 hours before I did it. I was like, oops, should have done that yesterday. I see you, Hermes. Hello. Lots of like little tech glitchy things. That's also been happening. That happens every Mercury retrograde. Hello, Dux Noctis. Welcome back. It's good to see you. I love to see familiar names. Yeah. So let's talk about the Mercury story. So they stationed retrograde on the 4th of August in Virgo. As of yesterday, they are now back in Leo. Meow meow. They have lost their sunbrella. They are now really close to the sun, and they're not getting that protection from being in their own sign. So at this point, communications, exchange, commerce, buying and selling, another name for commerce, travel potentially, music, all of that. I mean, the final situation is fine. We're ruled by the sun. But if any kind of communication is a little funky right now, or anything to do with technology gets a little funky for the next week or so, yep, Mercury is really close to the sun and it no longer has the protection of being in Virgo. So that is one thing to note. As much as like I think the pacing of stuff starts to increase as the month progresses, as Mars and Jupiter get away from Saturn, just because the pacing and the speed of things are increasing doesn't mean that like we're not still dealing with Mercury struggling in some kind of way right now. So double cross your T's, all of that, check your I's, whatever the Rickyism is that I'm doing right now. I feel like Mercury retrograde right now. Yeah, just over communicate. Don't double book yourself. Don't overbook yourself. Try to put more space in between engagements or events. That is really helpful practical advice for Mercury stuff. If other people are saying like wild things, just let them and ignore them. Protect your peace. Mercury retrograde, last thing I'll say about it in general is that it's a time of doing things differently and trying new things and being open to new things. So, especially in Leo, even if it's a return to a past way of expressing yourself, but maybe it's not your usual these days. That could be this. Or just trying new things or experimenting with expressiveness or self-expression. Yeah, all of that can be really constructive Mercury stuff. So it doesn't have to be just all about, avoidance of certain things. We can actually lean into a lot of cool Mercury retrograde stuff. Also shoring up of knowledge, maybe shoring up of self-knowledge here, coming back to yourself, coming back to any kind of practices that help you to know yourself. That would be a really good thing to do with this weather. And okay, anyway, they station on the 4th. On the 18th, it's the middle part of the retrograde. Let's go to there. So at exactly 8:58 p.m. Central Time. So that's the Sunday evening, which will be, if you're like more in universal time, I mean, that's kind of in the middle of your night, really early morning. And then the further global east you get, that's really effectively on Monday. This is more on Monday, on the 19th. But Mercury is going to be at the heart of the sun, in the heart of the sun at 26 degrees, 35 arc minutes. And that is a time of reprieve for Mercury, where they get a little bit of a break from being harmed by the beams. And the Hellenistic version of this, so within 1 degree, that begins at 7:44 a.m. Central Time on the 18th. And that extends to August 19th at 10:26 in the morning Central Time. So really effectively, like the better part of 2 days, or 2 days and some change, we have on the 18th, 19th, which is cute because this is all happening at the same time as a full moon. Very exciting. Um, it's a time of insight. It's a time of understanding of Mercury having a bit more clarity. So clarity, more clarity in communication, more clarity, or things going much better with commerce. So this is a little window here at those times I just gave, where you could, if you had a lot of communication to do or mercurial tasks to accomplish, that would be a good little window to get them done before we go back under the beams again. So listen to yourself, write down all your good ideas. If you're having a bunch of good ideas or downloads or understandings or insights, write them down, remember them, trust them, because it's a good day for all of that stuff. At the same time, and this is something that we need to revisit, the Mercury-Uranus square is happening, which is, I mean, if you want to add to that notion of sudden insight, unexpected insight, unexpected communications, doing things really differently. This is like extra differently. All of that's going on, and it's during a full moon. So yeah, the 18th is pretty fascinating, and I expect it to be really illuminating, exciting, in a really, I don't know, I hope it's a positive way for us. This is what I said the last time there was like a really expressive configuration in the sky before there was that assassination attempt. We need to, if you need to express yourself, do it in a way that doesn't hurt anyone. It's like kind of the basic rules of engagement here. This is a configuration on the 18th where I think we're going to potentially want to be very expressive. And I think there's going to be a lot of cool experiments we could do with that. Again, as long as, everyone's safe and all of that. So Mercury Cazimi. Another thing to note, while it is the middle of the Mercury retrograde story, when it comes to Mercury's relationship with the sun and their phase cycle, this is actually the restart of Mercury's relationship with the sun. It's a rebirth moment, and it's a rebirth for Gemini and Virgo. So if you look at the house topics in Virgo for yourself, look at the house topics in Gemini for yourself. If those topics could use a little reset, this is actually a really great week to do it. So for this Pisces rising, this would be with their partnerships, romantic, business, artistic, creative partnerships, best friends. Maybe there's a reset button or a rebirth happening there for this Pisces rising, maybe also with home, family, or parent relationships. Maybe there's a reset button there. Um, and you know, I'm always looking for examples internally and externally. So internally, you know, maybe it's a rebirth or a renewal, and it's approaching those topics in a different way from your own inside versus external events happening that create some kind of reset. So be looking, you know, internally as well as externally for the resets, the rebirths. And I wonder too if I assume, you know, a little bit of rebirthy renewal energy here in terms of like what Mercury is bringing to Leo and how the sun is interacting with these areas of the chart. So really cool potential there. I mean, who can't use a good rebirth every now and then? I mean, so the 18th of August, very interesting. Mercury is square Uranus. Let's look at what those were because we've already had one. Whoop. So the last one was July 21st of 2024, of course. Mercury was direct. They had not stationed retrograde yet. So yes, this was the first of the three. So if you want to look back in your journals or your calendar and see what was going on July 21st or around there, probably a few days before as well, that might hearken to something happening on the 18th of August. And we're going to have the second of three. And then the third one is on the 6th of September. So three-part story here about ways of communicating, changes with communication, changes with buying and selling, changes with travel, changes with any of these Mercury retrograde topics. I assume there's some adjustment, change, pivoting that's needing to happen here. And, you know, at worst, July 21st, August 18th, September 6th might be times where it's like there's a little bit of tension around some of those changes or um, some effort, maybe some cognitive effort, you know, thinking hard about how to make that adjustment or pivot or change if that is what's going on. Could also on these three dates, the 21st of July, August 18th, September 6th, just good old interruptions, good old Mercury retrograde, Uranus-y disruptions, interruptions. So be on notice as far as leaving early for places, over communicating, under scheduling, and doing that kind of Mercury retrograde protocol as well. And I would say like not only on these dates, but a few days before. So I'm going to be putting notes in my own calendar, probably like September 3rd leading up to this to remind myself, hey, this is coming. So, you know, it's like I'll make sure my internet is up and running and everything's okay well before I have a consult versus like an hour before, you know? So yeah. Also, just a good time to embrace change on those dates. What else? There's so much going on on the 18th. At this point, Venus is also, I mean, she's already doing it. It's right now. This is happening. Venus is opposing Saturn. Now, something that I notice with Venus opposing Saturn, it's like Venus is in this place of craftspersonship, of, you know, attention to detail. It's true. We say it a lot, but it's true. And they're getting this really serious critical ray from Saturn. And Saturn and Virgo are like two groovy peas in a pod. No, maybe groovy isn't the right word, but they're two peas in a pod for sure. And you know, Saturn standards, Virgo algorithms and details. And right now, Venus is kind of put to work in this fashion in this way. So if you do have like, especially like bigger, longer projects, like kind of that Saturnian type of stuff going on anywhere in your life. Now is a time where it's like we're putting Venusian work into it. Uh, like right now, for instance, I'm working on a bunch of transit reports, and I'm actually trying to reorganize all of them by month instead of just by planet to make them more readable, to make it like more usable and accessible by actual humans. So it's like Venus bringing in some humanity and some like, well, how is this going to be received actually? And trying to do so in kind of an orderly way. So I think this can be super duper constructive, as long as we're not being like it's like being that technician, but don't be hard on yourself, in a way that is harmful or harsh or, not leading with kindness necessarily. So that Vedic Balance said 2000 years ago, it's an anthology. Saturn was hypercritical and self-deprecating. They're also old things and what endures. But yeah, they can be that hypercritical kind of thing going on. Um, yeah, so if you're feeling like that, if that's around you, we can notice that and just, be careful where you point that thing. Are you pointing that very strong laser of critique at a project and making something really high quality? Are you pointing that at yourself? And if you are, like, I hope you're being nice about it. Because Mercury doesn't always care about being nice. They're here to do it the right way, if there is such a thing. They're here to do it, in a way that makes sense, in a way that's efficient and reasonable. And I think I don't know why, like I get like the Virgo fixie thing. I have a South Node Virgo and I was raised by Virgos. All of the people of my life. They're all Virgos, so Virgo-tastic. Um, so like definitely speaking from experience, like the fixing tendency, very real for Virgo. And it's not personal. Like that's the thing, is like the Virgo, to me at least, like Mercury just sees like this algorithm. It's like, what way makes sense? What's the reasonable, logical, rational way to do it? And that's really what the impetus for intervening and doing a thing in a certain way comes from for Virgo. Now, when Venus is here, we do get that injection of compassion, of, oh, this could help them in a way that is like beyond just what makes sense. It's like maybe you can see some other way, some other detail that you're putting loving compassion into. But yeah, I don't know. It can be a difficult combination. It doesn't have to be. And I see a lot of cool things come out of it. Like people like Martha Stewart have this. My mom has this. She's pretty much like Martha Stewart. It's really craftspeople and can make a lot of cool work. And that's going on this week. Now, if you're just trying to be like purely erotic, I don't know. I mean, God, one of my mentors, Lux ATL, they have Venus in Virgo, and they were voted one of the best strippers in Atlanta. Like they can do erotic. So, not saying that that's impossible at all. And in fact, a lot of the part about eroticism can be in attention to detail. But when Venus just kind of wants to be free and create art and not care about the outcome and not care about the process or what it looks like, that's harder for her to do here. So, take that for what you will. This is done really by like the 18th. Yeah. Yeah. By the time we get to the 19th, she's separating from Saturn. Yeah. So just be kind to each other and kind to yourself. That's the cliff notes for Venus opposite Saturn. And then Aquarius full moon on the 19th. Saturn is next door, making no aspect at all. On the 7th, wait, nope, not an eclipse. A full moon. Here we go. So Mercury has left Cazimi at this point. I checked. I got excited. I was like, ooh, is this a full moon? Mercury Cazimi? No, not quite. They have gone beyond the 27, or they would have needed to be at 26:15 or later, and they're retrograde still, so they're moving. They're too far away. Saturn can't see Aquarius. But I mean, pretty much the rest of the sky can, like Jupiter, Mars, they have an input here. Uranus has an input. But yeah, this whole Venus, Saturn, they're not seeing this. So really focused in on the Leo, Aquarius parts of your chart. And it's a culmination of some kind, any full moon, it's like a peaking of energy of this 4-week cycle. So a lot of times people are sharing things, people are doing things, taking actions during a full moon. We can be releasing projects out into the world to be seen. There's like this visibility component to it because it's a big, bright full moon. And so what is the moon shining its light upon in the Aquarius parts of our charts? So for me, this isn't my first house. Maybe it's something about me or my appearance or health or identity. I don't know. It could be so many things. Maybe for this Scorpio rising, it's going to shine some light on issues about home, dwelling, parents, ancestry, private life. Uh, and the sun is in a great place to anchor the rest of the sky back to ourselves, because as much as that moon in Aquarius can be very objective and just kind of cool rationality, we don't want to forget our will and our agency. You know, just because we can step outside of things and not put ourselves first, like that's a skill, but you don't want to be doing that all the time. Like you got to put yourself first sometimes. So I'm happy to see a Leo sun anchoring the sky. As far as the last decan, this part of Aquarius, this is the Seven of Swords for anyone who does tarot. And the Seven of Swords, gal, I'm kind of trying to pull myself away from the Rider-Waite Smith, the Pamela Coleman Smith art. Because I think it's so much more than like sneakiness and secrets or like whatever it looks like that person is doing in the swords card, the Seven of Swords card. It's like some shenanigans, some weirdness. Um, I don't know. I think it's just a really intellectual decan. I like how Austin Coppock talks about this decan and like cutting the Gordian knot, you know, just like, wow, I can analyze and think about this for a billion years. And, you know, these are my words, like you can think about it forever. But in the end, it's like you got to make a decision. You can't just be in this analytical loop forever. You know, at some point, you've got to figure it out, make a choice, make a conclusion. So if we find ourselves, you know, on the 19th, really analyzing something or having a lot of energy to analyze things, that could be really useful. Just make sure that you're not getting into some kind of loop of analysis that's not like fruitful or helpful. Um, yeah, it can be just a place too of, you know, having been resourceful, leaving behind what was maybe in Capricorn or established structures. And in Aquarius, we go outside of that and we say, I'm going to do my own thing. And crossing, now this is where that Pamela Coleman Smith art does resonate a little bit more with what I've seen of it, is these people in a boat seemingly going from one place to another. And it's like intellectually in air, like making that big leap of whatever concept you're working with, in understanding it and taking it in and integrating it. So this could be a moon of integrating a lot of information, integrating a lot of knowledge. So if that's, you know, just maybe it's like more of a mental, intellectual, insighty type of full moon for you, that could be a possibility. Uh, it's just fascinating to me that it's happening so much at the same time as all of these other things and in a square with Neptune. So look at the fixed signs, look at Taurus, Leo, Aquarius, and really see what's wanting to change, what's wanting to be expressed in those areas. And it's going to be pretty loud, I would think, on the 18th, 19th, leading into this full moon. Make as many changes as possible. That's what I would say. You know, if there are changes to make, it's always easier said than done. I mean, gosh, such a hallmark thing. Embrace change. Yeah, like you do it. I don't want to do it. You embrace change. No thanks. said like a true fixie. So that's the full moon. I don't think I have too much else to say about it. Oh yeah, last aspect, next aspect. So the last aspect the moon makes is that opposition to Mercury. So the moon has some conversation with Mercury about the details, the information that we might still need, the information that is missing, or maybe that Cazimi did give you some downloads, and now at this point the moon is kind of trying to integrate that. And then after the full moon, uh, they're going to meet Saturn by body over in Pisces. And so making it real, if you did have anything that came to light, Saturn could be like, okay, how are you going to integrate this practically into your real life? If you did have insights, maybe this is like the cold shower of reality, of realism that happens after those insights. But I think a lot of times Saturn is just like, okay, here are the parameters, here are the limitations. How do we grow in spite of that? Especially in Pisces, like how do we have hope and faith in spite of those challenges? I think that might be the conversation that's happening here, but it's not like a super happy conversation, it doesn't look like. Yeah, this wouldn't be like what I'd consider a soft and fluffy new moon, or sorry, full moon, or I don't know. It's not like warm and fuzzy. It's not warm and fuzzy. That's the words I'm looking for. It feels kind of serious in some ways. Now, the next thing that is on my radar after this full moon slash Mercury Cazimi slash all this stuff square Uranus, what happens after that is the Chiron stuff. So the first thing that happens is Mercury coming into a trine with Chiron. And so the ability on the 22nd to work through, converse through, think through matters of healing, ouchy things, really thinking through it. And from like that strong, stable heart space that is Leo, like hopefully with your self-esteem intact. And yeah, it just feels like some helpful words, whether words to yourself or a conversation that could be really healing. So I don't dislike this at all. It might be about something from the past, a tender thing from the past, but the trine makes me think that whatever Chiron stuff is coming up, it's more on that constructive healing, learning type of side. And we've got Jupiter shining their rays upon all of this really nicely. And then right after that, now Mars is applying to a sextile with Chiron. So Mars is like putting actions to those ideas and words. It's like having a realization or a healing and then behaving differently. Could be something like that. Or making a decision. Maybe it's easier to make decisions at the end of August than it is right now, especially with Mars being that planet of deciding, of really cutting away all the other options and making a choice. Mars running into Saturn, that's kind of tough. There's a lot of doubt that Mars has been maybe running into. And at this point, last 10 days of August, it's like Mars is much more free to decide. It's maybe easier to decide. It is in a place where it might feel like it's trying to decide stuff. It is in this last decan of Gemini, which is the Ten of Swords. Um, I think it was a Twitter person, Saul Mondrian from Twitter. They were saying about the Ten of Swords once, like they said, wow, that's way too many swords. And I agree. That is way too many. So many thoughts, thinking. But again, the fact that Mars is beyond Saturn, it's like I have much more hope that we can successfully whittle away or edit away the options and make decisions, if that is what this is for you. Maybe you're not in the position, that's not your context. But the other way I'm thinking about this again is more like action embodiment. based on what was healed or helped. It's a sextile. It feels constructive, but it's just tender. All of this is very tender. So talking through things with people if you need to, talking things through with yourself if you need to, but really with hope that it is strengthening bonds, strengthening connections, or leading to like a better quality of life in some kind of way. Venus and Mars are squaring too. That is another thing that is happening at this time. So like again, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, getting a lot of that Chiron stuff coming in at the same time. And actually, nope, this is actually before. So uh this is like all month. I think I missed this last time. I feel like this is another thing I probably failed to talk about. Um right now, Venus is applying to a square with Mars, and Mars is in the overcoming position. So Mars is the stronger one here. And so assertion is stronger, self-advocacy is stronger, conflict also stronger. So, take that for what you will, but it is a spicy time. With Mars Venus square, I love the phrase kind of you're either effing or fighting. You're either fighting or effing, right? It's kind of true sometimes. So whatever the release valve is for the tension, whether it's creativity, being creative, being passionate, that is very Venus Mars. It's like, this is what I like. And in Virgo, this is exactly what I like. And Mars is like, let's go get it and have like a three-pronged approach to going to get it. So it can be very, passion, creativity driven, and that squares are of the nature of Mars. So again, maybe it's just like highly energetic, like very energetic, a square. And so if you have channels for that, cool. But if you don't, and if in August at any time there is like itchiness or a sense of irritation or like wanting to exercise more agency, I think sometimes a lot of aversive Mars feelings come from a fact that we don't feel like we can do what we want to do. We don't feel like we can say what we want to say, and our agency feels tread upon. And so can we, like, in August, find ways to have agency, even in small ways if you're in a difficult situation, so that Mars can feel honored. Um, and then hopefully that'll be a bit of an off-gassing if there is any type of tension here, especially in like relationship or something. Yeah, that's very present in all of this. So just be tender and kind with each other for this month. Yeah, and it looks like she's beyond them by, let's say the 23rd. By August 23rd, Venus starts to separate, and then we should start to see any kind of itchiness or just restlessness, or if it is sexy and fun for you, that'll also start to wane a little bit after the 23rd. And then they're gonna, I think, more get into a trine, I assume. Yeah, I assume. Okay, what else? Venus square Mars. Uh, the Chiron stuff on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th. And then last kind of signature for the month, Mars and Venus also then, so they have a conversation with each other that lasts most of August, but then they're also going to both be navigating Neptune for the end of August. So Mars is going to be trying to take action, and they're trying to take action in a bit of a fog. Not quite sure, like maybe the next 10 steps, but maybe you can see the next 2 steps and just take the next 2. That's my Neptune advice, especially when Mars and Neptune are involved. Mars can be that motivation, that devotion, kind of, it can almost be sacrificing of itself sometimes, depending on where it is. And with Neptune, some of that type of like sacrificial energy or effort or activism that can come up with Mars sometimes. It gets misplaced or misdirected. So I would say before you feel called to jump in, intervene, help if you think you're helping, like get consent first. That pretty much clears up so much Mars, Venus, Neptune stuff. Uh, is just getting confirmation that whatever you think is like this helpful act of devotion, that it is actually wanted. Um, that can clear up so much stuff with these hard aspects. Um, it can be a really strong aspect for that like inspired action, like Neptune, inspiration, spirituality, and then Mars, action. And so maybe there's a bit of a needing to circle this square a bit, like what adjustments or changes are needed for Mars to meet Neptune a bit. If it's like Neptune has this ideal or this vision or a spiritual path, what can Mars do to act and behave however it wants to while not putting Neptune offside? That might be part of this square a bit. Um, it can be, I've noticed this a couple times coming at me. This is like when I get the most internet hate, actually, which is kind of interesting. Not to be like a woe is me at all. I'm totally fine. I feel great. Like I'm doing excellent. But I noticed that there's a lot of misdirected anger when Mars is square Neptune. Like someone got mad at me the last time this happened. This was actually like, this was like in early 2023. I had mentioned how grateful I was and how surprised I was that I had made astrology into my job. And I was like, whoa, nuts. And that's after having like, to be real, just like suffered in my career for a long time before that and worked really hard to get where I am. And like, I've worked so hard to be in this situation right now. And someone got so mad at me. They were so mad that I had done any of that and then had the audacity to talk about my success. Not everyone can turn it into a job. Yeah, I know. Sorry. I wish I could change it. I don't have control over your birth chart. But in any event, like, yeah, wherever you feel like your anger is going around the end of August, just be sure the target is online and that it's going to the right place. Yeah, and has outlets. This could just be sublimation of it in a way that like people say it's sublimation, but they're not really sublimating it. They're just like cramming it down. So, sometimes Neptune can be that diffusing or dissolving of anger. That can be in terms of, oh, I took care of my anger, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, hold your feelings like they're a baby and take care of them like you would a small child. Um, but sometimes Neptune is just, I think it just clouds or hides things or obfuscates what is really there. So making sure at the end of August that our outlets for Mars energy are in place and that our actions are on target and consent based. Yes. Okay. Venus, they're also going to be dealing with some of this stuff here at the end of August. And now relationally, we get some fog potentially. Now, some cool stuff that this could be, think about that devotional, inspired action of Mars, and Jupiter's there too, which is fun. And then Venus is like, and it's about art. We're going to make some art. We're going to make some really detail oriented, but inspired and passionate art. Or maybe it's like feeling really full of like energy for a spiritual practice or something. So it could be that kind of energy. And, with squares and oppositions, it's just a matter of how to find a good outlet for it in our lives, or just be with what is if we don't have that outlet in front of us. But it can be cool, passionate energy toward relationships, toward spirituality, art, values, ethics. What we want to watch out for is fog around relationships, a lack of communication. So over communicate during this time at the end of August. of course, over communicate because Mercury and Mercury square Uranus. This is just one more reason in the sky right now to over communicate for the rest of August. The Venus does have the ability to put together some cool energies around like, okay, they are very practical minded. They're in Earth. So they're like, yeah, what are the facts on the ground? And they can try to balance that with the vision or what is imagined to be like the best version. Venus can be like, okay, how are we going to achieve that? And have that conversation that I've kind of been thinking about anytime like the moon is opposite Saturn. It's like, what are the little process oriented things that need to happen on the way to our really big dreams and our big visions? And I think there's a way to use these energies really like peanut butter and jelly in terms of that kind of real world prowess and imaginal prowess. So that could be very cool. Just watch out for shenanigans from other people. Oh man, oh, I hate to say this stuff, but watch your drink at the bar like last week of August. This is drink watching weather at the bar. I might be projecting my own fears, but yeah, that's that could be that because it's just deception, straight up deception sometimes with that Neptune. Um, hmm, hmm. I've been watching too much Olympics breakdancing. I'm going to check on the chat. And I think we're going to talk about that benefic enclosure. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you, Yaz. Great to have you. Um, oh no, Astro Josh. Yeah, Neptune's got someone in a spiritual tumble dryer at the moment. Wow, that's such a great visual. I have Neptune on my moon right now. And I'm like, I would like, this is a cool ride. I get it. It's great, but I'm ready to be off of it. Oh, you have first house Neptune squaring that full moon, trining. Oh, you're having a Neptune trine. Oh, I wonder what that's like. I think I'll have one before I die. Did I already have mine? No. I'm in my Neptune square right now. Um, Yeah, Neptune's on my moon. And the other day, just to give you an idea, and granted, I have a Pisces moon, so it makes it worse. Um, but I cried because I was so frustrated because I was trying not to kill a fruit fly. And I was so annoyed at the aversion that I was having to that fruit fly. I'm like, God, I'm so tired of wanting to end insect lives. I'm so tired of it. There's a fancy, not fancy. There's a special word for this in the Pali language. Like there's a Buddhist word for this. I forget. Like there's a specific, it's like where English doesn't have the words to describe what it is. But I'm having that, and it's 100% Neptune. And I actually hadn't been following it because they were moving direct and they were moving away from my moon. And then a couple months ago, Neptune stationed retrograde, and I did not track that at all, and I forgot about it. And then I was crying the other night about this fruit fly thing. Which I feel insane telling you about. Uh, and I was like, oh my God, where is Neptune? This is some Neptune shit for sure. So, and sure enough, I was like, that's right. They stationed retrograde. They're coming for me again directly by degree, almost. So, yeah, I think there's like 5 degrees separating right now, but 5 apparently is enough for me to be crying about fruit fly aversion. Uh, yeah. Mm. What else do I have to say right now about the weather? Let's see. Mercury stations direct on the 28th. And they're going to be at 21 degrees of Leo. And then they're between October 28th and September 11th. They're going to retrace all the steps that they just retrograded through. So they're going to make it back to, I think it was like 4 degrees of Virgo is where they stationed Did they? No, I'm going to check. It was on the 4th. Oh, and it was at 4 degrees. Aha. All right, I was right. 28th of August, we get Mercury stationing direct. So at this point too, like whenever a planet is stationing, so really slowing down and then not really moving at all before they start changing direction in apparent motion, that makes that planet louder. It intensifies, in this case, Mercury. So during the stations, so especially like around August 4th, around August 28th, I would expect there to be a flurry of communication, more emails, more Mercury, more buying and selling, more talking, more listening, more traveling, all the Mercury stuff, or those areas in your chart. So for this Capricorn rising, like their 6th house and 9th house might be extra active and loud while Mercury is stationing. For me, that's going to be my 8th and my 5th. So maybe some creative collaborations will be more active during that time. So watch for that. Mercury is going to be stationing. And then at this point as well, they're going to be becoming visible. They're 15 degrees away from the sun. And the sun is going to be moving away from them for a little bit. And they're going to have some visibility in the morning sky before the sun rises. So at the end of August, as we go into September, Mercury becoming visible in the sky also means that Mercury things should become more and more visible into September. So there's a difference between like busyness, like of that Mercury station, that exclamation point, that busyness of it, the just sheer loudness of it. That's one thing to consider. And then you also have visibility. Can I see that planet in the sky or not? Especially, before the sun rises or after the sun sets. And then that's going to affect how the planet, how its symbolism comes out. And when a planet is visible, they're doing their things more visibly. So for instance, I might be having a ton of emails, but like no one knows. It's a secret. Like I don't tell people how many emails I get. Versus like, getting a bunch of public news or a bunch of insight coming in from somewhere, or you've been waiting for a response or something to an application. The chances of you getting that response with Mercury visible increases. So as Mercury increases in their visibility, the probability of Mercury stuff happening more and more out loud in front of us also increases. So yeah, if you're waiting for information, hang in there. Might be coming more in September than August. If you're waiting to see how Mercury topics are going to like flesh out after all of this, I think we need to wait till September to see how how all the cookies are gonna crumble, so to speak. Mercury stationing Venus is going to be exactly opposite Neptune as well on the 28th. So that's pretty interesting. I don't know if those stories are related. I think they might be, but and then the final thing I wanted to let you all know about was a benefic enclosure of the moon. So this one here, 33 hours. What time zone is this in? This is in universal time. So 20 hours, 10 minutes universal time. What would that be? Oh, I'm bad at this. I won't try. Until 6 in the morning on September 1st, universal time. That is when the moon is in this nice, nestled in between these nice rays from Venus and Jupiter, stabilizing things, wrapping us in a little bit of bubble wrap, making things more fun and cool, or more safe than they would have been otherwise. So if you need a little pocket of time to do something, this is a time to do it. And the moon is going to be between 1 degree, 34 arc minutes, and 19 degrees, 3 arc minutes. So that's August 30th through August 31st into September 1st. And I thought that was pretty cool. There is this other one on August 21st, but it's like 3 hours long. And so I kind of don't care. But for if anyone does care. This is another one that's happening. August 21st, there's a little itty bitty babies one when the moon is between 17 and 19 degrees of Pisces-ish. Okay, I think those are my main transit thingies. Let me see if anyone's got any questions. Anything I missed? Any? I'm glad you thought it was funny. Dux Noctis, yeah, it is just brains. Brains are so wild. Wow. Okay, any final last call? Any final things you wish we would have discussed that we did not? And then I am going to do my announcements. Oh, darn, I was going to look something else up too. I do a newsletter every month. So you can go to my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com, and there is a newsletter sign up, and I send one out every month around when the sun changes signs. And so I do my discount codes in there. But if you want all my sweet, sweet discount codes, that's where they come. So right now there's one for August still. It's 15% off any forecasting sessions, new and return clients. The code WEATHER, WEATHER. And that code expires on September 1st. And then I'm going to come out with a new one before that. I'm about to write my newsletter for September. So 15% off with the code WEATHER for forecasting sessions for the month of August, and sign up for my newsletter so you can get those discounts. I'll also usually send in the newsletter. It always has my dates of interest. If I feel like writing a cute thing, I'll put it in there. That's where my rising sign horoscopes go. The rare instance I do a rising sign horoscope, and all of my events. So links to all my events. It's all one-stop shop. And then I do have a workshop. Let me show you that too, because it's not on my regular website because Squarespace. If you work for Squarespace and you're watching this right now, y'all got to figure out how I can sell lectures on your website. I need to be able to upload like a PDF and a video doc and an audio doc. That's what I need to upload. And y'all are not letting me do that. So please make that available. In the meantime, let me change my share here. I'm selling this on podia.com. You can find my Jupiter and Gemini workshop here. Jupiter and Gemini, parenthetically square Saturn, because that's totally part of its experience. Well, it's going to be in Gemini this time. I undersold this so much. I should have charged way more than 15 bucks. This is worth probably $45. And I was silly and I don't know what I was thinking. Saturn's in my second. Selling it for only $15. So like it's a 1.5 hour workshop. I have a big deck of slides that show you how to apply all the information based on rising sign. So I essentially help you write your own horoscope for this Jupiter and Gemini time. Check that out. That's going to be there. There's this energy of Jupiter square Saturn. That is what is peaking this week. So this workshop is super relevant to this week. And then it's also very relevant, especially looking at the Saturn Jupiter square that is going to heat up similarly in December. So now December is when that Jupiter Saturn square is really heating up. Jupiter is going to be in Gemini until next summer or next winter, depending on your hemisphere. So we've still got a good 6, at least way more than that. It's until June. It's funny. I did a whole workshop on it and I'm already forgetting. I'm already forgetting things. They enter June. Yeah, it's June 9th of 2025. So Jupiter is going to be in Gemini until next June. So there is plenty of time for this workshop to be relevant. So yeah, check it out if you're interested. My website exists. I'm doing readings. If you're interested in this style of astrology, I do Hellenistic astrology kind of as a foundation, but then of course I use modern stuff on top. So, yeah, get a reading if you want. I do natal chart reading. I do forecasting, which looks more at the future. If you want to look at the past, we can do that too. Trying to make sense of things. I do synastry consulting, so looking at two charts together and comparing them and contrasting them. And then I also do mentoring and tutoring. So if you're learning astrology, if you're a student of astrology, and or if you're a practitioner and you just want to talk shop, see how I do things, I'm kind of an open book in those sessions. So if you're starting your own practice or just need someone to bounce ideas off of, totally here to do that. I've been at this since 2020 in terms of my like consulting practice. I started giving readings in late 2020, kind of very privately. I started making my website in 2020, so I've had a website for four years now. So I can at least speak from some of that experience. And then before that, I was a pharmacist for a decade. So I've been talking to people about life for a long time. And I'm happy to provide any insight I've gotten through mentorship or in individual tutoring. So check that out as well. I think that's it. I think that's all my announcements. Yeah, take care of yourself, take care of each other, be kind to yourself. We've got a little crunchy things to get through here this week. Last part of August is going to start moving a lot faster. And then I think once we get into September, cookies shall land where they're going to land. More news is going to come in on stuff. More information is going to come in on stuff in September. But for now, yeah, let's try to embrace what's new, embrace what's different, go with the flow. There's going to be changes, pivots, adjusting, and we're just going to have to kind of bob and weave around it. Life finds a way, Jurassic Park, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I love you all so much. Let me see if there's any other final things. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for everyone's presence and engagement and everyone's little contributions. I love it. Uh, yeah, and if you have any questions, put it in the comment below if you're listening to this later. And you can always email me at aligninglighastro@gmail.com. Oh, that reminds me, one final thing. I have a feedback form, and I think I have successfully made it. I'm only telling you this at the end. I would never say this at the front because I don't know about internet trolls, but my feedback form is anonymous. I was trying so hard because nothing makes me more angry than feedback forms that are not anonymous. Because how do you feel safe giving negative feedback if they know who you are? And like, I don't, like, I want all the feedback. So that is up and running. That's on my website as well. So if you want to give a testimonial, of course, we love those. But I do think it's worth noting that yeah, like if you just don't put in your email, I won't see where it's from. It just gets shunted into a Google Doc, a Google Drive doc. That's where that information goes. So if you don't put in your email, I won't know where it came from essentially. So far, I've only used it to send myself notes like, you're amazing and you're beautiful. And then I forget about it and I go into my email and I'm like, oh, who said that? Oh, it was me. And this is how I survive my 12th house life. This is how I survive it. But yeah, I got a feedback form and then I've also started doing that at the end of, I should have been doing this a long time ago, but follow-up emails after my consultations. Like, yeah. So Mercury retrograde, these are the things I'm getting into place that should have already been in place in the first place. That's my last announcement. Okay. Again, thank you so much, everyone. I will see you next time. I have not scheduled the next one, so just watch my newsletter and watch here on my YouTube channel. I always do it beforehand. So, okay. All right. Oh, hit the like button. Hit the like button. Hit subscribe. And thank you for dealing with the commercials. I know they exist. I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate you in dealing with them. All right. Everyone have a great rest of your